Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Students of Sales podcast. Today, I'm playing host. I've got my guests here, the Tyler Witt, as well as the Phil Mann. Gentlemen, how have you guys been doing?
Doing awesome, Ace.
Doing great, doing great. Happy Thanksgiving for last week, everybody. I hope I don't give away the timelines in which we record these
I was going to say,
sessions.
somebody listening to this in like the very far future is going to be like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, when was
Or
this?
whatever holiday, insert whatever holiday just passed
Right,
here.
right.
I
Well, you
was
know,
I had some friends over last night, and I was trying to get rid of my Oktoberfest beers because no one wants them in February, March, because it'll be obvious how long I've had them. So I need everybody to drink my Oktoberfest beers.
No, you hold on to them and then you sell them as like novelty rare items, right? Like, yeah,
Yeah,
there you go. It's vintage.
yeah,
yeah,
vintage. There you go.
you know but listen, I mean, the great thing about today's episode is, regardless of whether you're listening to this, right after Thanksgiving or later on into the new year, the topic that we're covering today, it's pretty timeless, right? And
Mm,
so if you guys haven't already been able to tell, today we're going to be giving you guys tips on how to crush your next sales call. We're really excited to kind of share with you guys from our personal experience in sales ourselves, as well as feedback from the sales reps that we support, that we coach, train, and manage, the tips, tricks, strategies that we've all been able to use, that have helped us to have some great success in sales on a regular, consistent basis, to crush every one of our sales calls. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in. And Phil has the pleasure of kicking us off with the first tip to uh, crushing your next sales call. And so, uh, Phil, why don't you go ahead and let us know what you believe is one of the key core components to crushing the next sales call?
awesome. Thanks, Mace. So I want to talk about prep. Now, this almost seems like, oh, Phil, okay, yeah, prep is going to help me on my call. I don't want to talk about your traditional prep. I don't want to talk about, doing your research on the business. I don't want to, I don't care in the scenario who you're already working with and case studies and testimonials you can share. I want to talk about prepping for the person that you have on the call. I want to talk about prep for the relationship. Now, for some lucky folk, relationship comes natural, and those people who are like Jedis at sales, and experts and stuff like that, which I don't believe there are such thing, but people who are relationship experts, and it just comes easy to them. They don't need to worry about this. But particularly for, maybe SDRs or AEs who are kind of, newer to the game, they're still kind of honing in on their craft. I want to talk about prepping for the person that you have on the call, because that's what's going to build this relationship for you. So it's not going to be a question that you ask, on the call about their business that's going to build a connection. It's going to be a question you ask about them as an individual. You connecting with them and building a meaningful relationship with them. So I'm a huge believer on the relationship being more important than the product or service and the price. A lot of people would disagree with me on that, but that's where, I'm really, really passionate about that. But I want to talk about how you can prepare for the person. Okay. So 30, 40, 50 years ago, salespeople had to work so much harder to build a relationship. They did not have LinkedIn at their fingertips. They did not have, about us bios on the websites. They did not have all of these amazing things that we have at their fingertips. So that's the first thing I would just encourage you to do: as much research online as you possibly can about this person. To the point, I actually was speaking with a salesperson the other day, and I was just he told me about this guy, and he had to really he struggled with the relationship on the first call. And I said to him, "What's your plan for the next call?" And he said, "Oh, Phil, I've been all over this guy's Facebook, and I found out that he's a soccer nut." And I'm like, "Oh my God, that's amazing. How are you going to integrate that into the call?" And obviously we've got the World Cup on right now. And honestly, before that little moment of going on the guy's Facebook, he wouldn't have had that. Now, I'm not talking about stalking all of your prospects or people that you're, connecting with. But what I'm asking you right now is, are you preparing for the person that you have on the call? Also the type of person they are. So we're going to do another session on, the different types of relationships, disc profiling, all of that stuff. But, you just use your smarts. If you're jumping on with a HR person, you know, typically they're going to want the facts, the data, stuff like that. If you're, you know, getting on the phone with you know, someone in the automotive industry, you'll probably be able to shoot the shit a little bit more. But, you know, ultimately, how are you preparing to connect with this individual? What questions can you prepare and ask for, you know, in terms of them as an individual? So there's a great thing, it's called a connect question. Okay. So here's an example of a connect question. Oh, Tyler, I saw on your LinkedIn, you know, you went to school in Idaho, but you're based in Arizona. How did that happen? Really open loop question, tells the person, tells Tyler, I've done my research, and it's going to be a really cool story for Tyler to share, because people love to talk about themselves. So another great connect question might be, Mace, I can see you've been in the software for business for 18 years. Congratulations. That's incredible. You know, I imagine it's probably changed quite a lot since you've kind of started working in it. So what's the journey been like for you? You know, like real connecting question, you know, so many different answers that you can get to them. But I don't know, Mace, Tyler, how do you guys prepare for the relationship that you're about to have with these people on the phones?
Yeah, so for me, it's a very similar process, right? As part of my kind of pre-meeting prep, I am online doing research about the individual, right? So I'm Googling their name in general. I'm looking at their LinkedIn profile. I'm looking for, you know, openers, right? Or windows rather
Windows,
for
yeah.
conversation. And you know, it varies, right, from person to person. And you know, sometimes it's location, sometimes it's something they reference in their kind of bio that I can make a connection on. It could be, you know, the company, the location, you know, but I'm always looking for two or three things that I could make a connection on. And one thing I will note is this, right? I also do think about, you know, current events, right, that are safe to initiate a conversation on,
Right.
right, as well. I'll use that, especially if like can't quite get a bead on something from just kind of doing that research on them. And you know, as you were talking, you know, there is one meeting in particular that comes up where it was right around the time when the season finale of Game of Thrones had taken place,
Oh,
and it was
interesting.
obvious that like 80% of the world
Everybody watched it.
was
Yes.
watching Game
Yeah.
of Thrones, right? So I knew there was a good chance that I would land that would land as kind of a, you know, kind of a rapport building kind of a topic for the person I was meeting with. And sure enough, right as we got on to the meeting, I think one of my first kind of questions were, you know, have you seen the season finale of Game of Thrones yet? And she lit up like a Christmas tree and
Wow.
went on for, you know, 5 or 10 minutes about you know, Game of Thrones, and it made it very easy for us to then, you know, have a business conversation. And you know, again, so to your point, Phil, it is really important to find some openers, some windows, some connecting topics which lead to connecting questions. So,
Yeah.
Tyler, what about you? What
Absolutely.
are some of your kind of tips and suggestions and success stories with finding something that could connect you to the person you're meeting with?
I always follow the like Charlie Brown, Linus kind of approach. There's only three topics you don't discuss: religion, politics, and the Great Pumpkin. Literally everything else to me is going to be fair game. And yeah, I mean, it's funny. It was prep in I Phil kind of talks about it there, but I don't really do a lot of business prep because I'll do a couple of quick little things that all right kind of point me in the right direction. But I'm going to have a call where I'm going to learn that stuff from the person, right? It doesn't take after enough time, it doesn't take you that long. You kind of look at your prospect, and you get a pretty good sense. But one thing I think in sales is you get good at is just profiling. Like I can look at a LinkedIn, I can look at their Facebook. You got a pretty good sense, like, all right, where are they in the country? What do they have on their LinkedIn? Like, what kind of personality do they have? And you pick up on that pretty quick, and you just want, which kind of like, I think it goes nicely. So I'll kind of launch into this is, so my number one thing, it's right in line with that. And why you want to do the prep is when you get on the call, you have to be charming as hell. And I think this is, to me, I have this as my kind of number one sales rule, in the sense of when you get on the phone, and I think people dismiss this nowadays, but like you sell yourself first. People are going to buy from you. And, in these kind of environments, it's actually weird for me because I speak a lot. And when I'm on sales calls, it's the polar opposite. So for me, having charisma, right, is really about two things. Number one, you have to be like worldly is the way to put it. So I had an economics professor in college. He said, the most important thing is that you have a cocktail knowledge of everything. So meaning, like if you went to a cocktail party, could you talk to this person and have at least like an interesting question to ask them that would get them to talk? Do you know enough about it to at least not sound like an idiot when you're asking a question, right? And then the other part of it to being, charismatic is that you keep it focused on the other person. So when I come in, when I'm going into sales calls, first and foremost, I want that center of attention on my prospect in a professional way, obviously. But I spend a lot of times, I watch a lot of stand-up comedy, read a lot of humorous books, those kind of things. Watch the way that these people tell stories, how they, Phil knows, I never miss a chance, to tell a joke, right? Old Ricky Gervais line, never miss that chance to tell that joke. And when I go into my calls, I'm enjoying it. I think there's a lot of tendency today to be very stiff on calls, right? We're going to talk about this problem. And Phil, why don't you tell me what's been keeping you up at night? I'm an oncologist or something. It's not, we don't need this somber of a mood on the call. And I think salespeople really struggle with that. With they number one, they're not studying life. Go out, live a life. Go get your feet dirty, your hands dirty, right? Go play in the mud. Go out there and enjoy life. You're going to be a lot more interesting and have shared experiences with a lot more people. And that's really, really important, is that you have those kind of shared experiences. Oh yeah. Oh, you've been to Kentucky? Yeah, I went out there. It's humid. How long have you lived out there? How do you deal with that kind of, this, that, and the other, right? Oh, whatever it is, right? Whatever, ate at this restaurant, something. And then the second thing is, though, make it about them. What you don't want to do is you don't want to do what everybody does on social media, right? Which I kind of did there. I caught myself doing it, but so, Mace, you said oh yeah, I went to Paris. I don't say, oh yeah, I've been to Paris before. Did you go to this restaurant? That is about me. That's about my experience in Paris. And I'm actually comparing you to me. People don't like that shit. And they do that all the time on social media. So for me, it's that charm. Study a broad bunch of things. Go watch Kevin Hart. Go watch Steve Martin. Go watch some of these greats of comedy and watch the way that they tell the stories, how they engage with the audience, and how they enjoy it. And I think, to me, if you have that on a sales call and the people are enjoying the experience. So the last little thought I have on it is this: people are there for a dinner and a show. I've always said that they're there for dinner and a show. The dinner is the solution, the platform, the whatever it is, the product that you're selling. You're the show. You're the center of the show. And if they're not enjoying themselves, I promise you, it doesn't matter how good your price is, how great your product is. None of that shit matters at all. If they're not enjoying the show, they have to want to talk to you again. Yeah. Otherwise, they can just go, fill out a form online and, with another company. But Phil, you've always been, that's one thing I think I gravitated towards you right away when we first met. Is you've got that kind of, belief. I don't want to call it rapport. I think you call it rapport a lot, but I think it's that kind of get on a call and yeah.
I got the same 31 jokes that I've been using for north of 10 years. And,
they still work though. They never heard it before.
That's it. Yeah. They've never heard it before. So yeah, I die a little bit inside and I feel like a parrot when I say them, but they really enjoy it, so be charming. Absolutely. And part of it's giving a show, part of it's, just making sure that, prospects enjoying their time with you. But part of it's actually selling, selling yourself, even complimenting people. Mace, you've got an incredible background. Walk me through it there. That looks really cool. So Michael Jordan doing a slam dunk there, lots of other sports, load of cool books there. Compliment people. Tyler, I really like your glasses. They're really cool. So just silly little small things, so be a human, be a person, and that's a big part of it as well. But, dinner and a show, love that analogy, the dinner is the meat and potatoes of your actual product or service, but you're the show. You're what's going to separate them. So if I have two salespeople let's say Tyler and Mace are both trying to sell me the same product. Tyler asked me how the weather was, and that's the meaningful connection that me and him had. Or Mace, me and him are talking about the World Cup, we're talking about the sports memorabilia that we both have, and like we're talking 5-10 minutes. Even if Tyler has a better product, I still want to call Mace. I still want to call Mace back. That's such an interesting
Well,
perspective. But
and I think, and I just want to jump in on that because I think that is where a lot of salespeople struggle. Is like, I was thinking about with you, how many times are you on it? Like somebody's pitching you, and they're like, "Oh, it's an interesting accent, Phil. Where are you from?" Right? Like, yeah, yeah. Like, and that's their kind of rapport piece with you when it's like you actually make it connect. When you give that shit about that other person on the other end, and you have a laugh with them.
yeah,
It makes all the difference in the world. Yeah, like don't
100%.
have superficial rapport. Like
right.
actually care about that person.
For sure. And this whole topic of charm, before we move on, I want to say is I'm convinced that charm comes in multiple shapes and sizes
Yeah,
Yes.
and colors, right? So, and I think a lot of that is determined by who's on the other end of this, right? So, for some, big energy is charming, and for others, not so much, right?
right.
Um, Smooth, cool, calm, and collected is could be
Right.
charming to others, where for others that may be boring. So, using your analogy about the show, like we're all into different kinds of shows, right?
Yeah.
Some prefer dry humor, others prefer action or adventure or sci-fi. And I feel like charm comes in very similar packages. And so I think it's important to be mindful of whom your audience is. And it actually kind of plays into the next topic, which actually is one of mine, and it is discovery, right? And it's interesting, right? Discovery is not just referencing doing discovery during the call. This actually goes into, kind of to Phil's point, the pre-call stuff, right? So doing your discovery on the individual is going to help you to identify what version of charming is going to connect with them, right? And so, uh, you know, this topic of discovery, I look at this a couple different ways, right? When I talk about discovery, the first thing that comes to mind for me, it is curiosity, right? And
Mhm.
so, if you want to crush that next sales call from a discovery perspective, I think first of all, both what Phil and Tyler have already shared are elements of that discovery, right? Before the call, doing some discovery on the person, obviously doing some discovery around the business, and then also again on the charming side of things, using that discovery to determine how you're going to communicate to the person or the people that are going to be on that call. I think is an element of discovery. And I don't want to get wrapped up in, well, what is your discovery model, whether it's spin or band or medic. There's all kinds of kind of discovery solutions. I don't think that's not my point, and we can that's actually probably a podcast in and of
Like
itself.
5 episodes by itself.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I do want to attack discovery from more of a broad perspective, right? And so again, going back to that whole idea about being curious. And so for me, one of the things that I recommend doing is before this meeting with this person or with these individuals is let's get curious about what questions could I answer on my own, right? What could what question do I have that I could find the answers before I get on this call, right? So I'm not asking unnecessary questions, right? And then what's left over, right? What are the questions that I need answers to understand how I can either help them solve a problem or accomplish a goal? And I'm a big proponent of having doing some pre-discovery prep, right? Not going in and just kind of winging your discovery, even though there will be some impromptu or improvised discovery done throughout the call, because you never know what their answers are going to be to the questions, and those are going to lead you down a path of follow-up questions that you can't prep for. But I am a huge proponent of having a handful of questions that I know before I get off the call, whether they're done before I get into the actual demo itself, mid call, or at the end of it. I know I need answers to these questions. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to do a good job of helping them solve their problem or accomplishing their goal. And again, those questions are going to vary depending on whom it is I'm having this meeting with, right? And so I think there are certain questions that are unique to certain personas, right? So there are, questions you ask if they're meeting with the CEO or someone on the C level of the organization that you might not ask if you're talking to somebody that's, in a different department, whether it's like there's quite, I mean, you guys very well know, right? There's questions you would ask marketing that you might not ask sales, right? That you
Right.
might not ask again the C level. So knowing your audience is going to plays a big part in the kind of discovery questions that you're asking as well too, because we all well know there are questions you ask someone in that audience, you ask the CEO, they're not going to have any clue what they are because that's
Yeah.
not their
Right.
wheelhouse, right?
Yeah.
Not
When
to
I
pick on
That's right.
marketing, but you ask marketing certain questions that are probably better suited for sales and vice
yeah.
versa. You're not going to be able to get an answer. It sounds like Tyler, you
I
wanted to touch on
no,
something
I
there.
think you're exactly right because one of the things in discovery, like I've been doing a lot of thinking about recently, is I had this thing years ago, and I've gone through so many different trainings, this, that, and the other, and every 6 months, 8 months, whatever, I recalibrate back to it, and it always looks like this. My discovery is, look, is there a problem? Do they see the problem? Can I solve the problem? Like that's to me, that's the basics of it. And I think where a lot of salespeople in discovery really get in trouble is plainly they know what their product does. They have no idea why their customers need it.
Mm.
They could tell you all day long about all the aspects of the car, the size of the engine, the gas mileage, this feature, this and the other. They have no idea what it's like to be a single parent stuck in traffic, whatever it is, right? Like, or yeah, I go on and on, so not take up time with examples, but that to me, I think from a discovery standpoint, it's about backing up a little bit, and you as a salesperson, you better actually understand what it is your product what does for your customers, not how it does it, but
Yeah.
what it does. And then when you're in the discovery, it's literally like I can, super simple. Like, Phil, let me ask you these. Depending, it doesn't matter what your role is because they are going to change a little bit. Like, all right, like, do you do this? You do that? Do you do that? Yeah, okay, we have a problem, right? Like, you know, do you get less than 5 hours of sleep a night? Yes, I do, right? Do you eat fast food more than 3 times a day? Yeah, I do, right? Like, right, you have a health problem, right? And that's easy for me to ask questions to identify that. And then, do you see the problem? Right. So, Phil, like, do you understand why that's bad for you? No, I don't think it is. This is going to be a tough sale. This is going to be really, really tough. Whereas if I'm like, okay, you ask that one or two problem questions, and they agree with you, and then boom, and then it stills my product solved. So anyway, like for me, the
Yeah.
discovery, if you really want to keep it simple, just figure out like how do I ask a couple questions so I can identify that problem, right? And then it's just one or two questions to see, do you see it? And then like, all right, is that something I can solve? You want a quick
Yeah.
cheat sheet? Just say, yeah. So, but anyway, that's the framework I kind of go off of discovery. And I think people tend to overcomplicate that, right, Phil? Like, I don't
Yeah.
need 20 questions. Like we'll discover throughout the whole process.
Yeah.
I always think of two things when it comes to discovery. I always think when does my discovery start? Human brain's a fantastic thing, by the way. Most people are blessed with
Most
really big
people
ones.
speak for
I
yourself
have,
there, Phil.
tiny brain. I have a pea brain. So, if you're prepping for the day, the day before, but I always prep for a really big call the day before because believe it or not, even in your subconscious, you're working on that call. Like,
Yeah.
you're walking down the stairs going to get some a late night snack or something like that, oh, I've got that call with Tyler tomorrow. Oh yeah, I've got to be sure to ask him that question. So, I always prepare the day before. I always prepare 2 hours before. Why not 1 hour? Because something's going to come up and, I don't want anything,
Yeah.
but discovery starts the day before. And when does discovery end? When they sign the agreement. So you are just
Yeah.
in constant discovery mode. So the first thing I always think about discovery is when I should be doing it. And hopefully that kind of touches on that. But the other thing I think of is like, if you were asking the same 10 discovery questions on every single call, I promise you, you're on a very, very bad road in sales.
Absolutely.
So we call this thing snowflake discovery. Every business is different. Every person's different. Everyone's got different problems. Large companies, small companies, different sales teams, different XYZ, different solutions. So every discovery should be a snowflake discovery. And the other thing is, like a lot of businesses I'm speaking to right now, they're actually doing different types of discovery based on the job title. So, for example, if Tyler's the CEO, he's going to get 10 wildly different questions to Mace, who's the head of sales. So, like, they're almost two different discoveries. It's the same
Yeah.
business, but I need to ask the right questions based on the role that I have on the
Yeah.
call. So,
Yeah.
every business is a snowflake. Every business is different. Every discovery is different. Every person's different. So, the same questions. If I have a great call with Tyler asking him 10 questions, if I ask the same 10 questions to Mace, they will not and should not land because they're different people, different businesses, different calls. So when does your discovery start? When does it end? And just get those snowflake discoveries in there every time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Phil, that is a great point, and it reminds me of an exercise that earlier in my sales career, and I still kind of do it subconsciously or unconsciously now, is to develop that muscle of being able to ask questions on the fly based on the situation, the circumstances, right? That there's an art to that, right? You've got your kind of, like you said, you've got your kind of canned questions that are like kind of table stakes, and you don't want to be limited to just those questions because you're going to miss a lot of discovery if that's all that you're limited to. But anyway, what I would do is when I would pick my daughter up from school, I would I would just ask questions, right? And and again, I'd start with kind of the general, right? You know, how was school today? What were some of the interesting things that happened today, right? So those are kind of the like to get the
Right.
conversation started. But then based on what she said happened that day, and every day it was always something different, that kind of colored what my follow-up discovery questions were. And part of me, just about you know, am I interested or was I interested? Sure, to a degree, but
Might be
really for
watching
me,
this, Mace, so say yes. Highlight
she might be. She gets it
of
now.
my
She
day.
knows
Highlight of my
now.
day.
Yeah, highlight of my day. But truly, right underneath that is I'm developing this muscle of being able to, listen well, right, and based off of what I'm hearing, determine what my next questions are, right, and just
Yeah.
getting to a point where it's like I could hear something and and be able to extract more from that. And so again, whether it's your little ones or your girlfriend or boyfriend or spouse, I would encourage you guys to, and again, if discovery is something that you recognize, it's something I need to get better at, right? And you don't want to be practicing on your prospects, right? You
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
want to use them as training ground, right? Use just general conversations you're having with people to
Yeah.
develop that discovery, that being curious muscle, and it
Yeah.
will transfer over to your sales conversations for sure.
Very nice.
Absolutely. And just a real quick one on the. I've got to take you off track for a second, just based on what May said there. Um, Kids are crazy. They're always really loud and stuff like that. And my niece was being crazy the other day, so I just literally asked her, "What did you learn at school today?" And she just like, she just like, you ever want to calm your kid down, ask them what they learned at school. But yeah,
No,
sorry, a
that's
bit
a great
It
random.
one.
reminds me, it's like a prospect call. It's like, you ever want to get control back? It's like, hey, that reminds me. Have you guys talked about budget for this project yet? Like, oh, well, here, it'll just, whatever was happening before that is now out the window, and they will
Yeah.
just start scrambling. Yeah, yeah. Uh, right. So I'm gonna keep this going. So that was good. So like you said, I think discovery be it one on its own. Um, so next one we got here is problem solving. I
Problem
think these go
solving.
hand in hand, right?
They really do. So I don't need to go on a long rant on the problem solving one because it's connected to the discovery. Because at the end of the day, the discovery, which again, let's be clear, discovery is not just limited to the questions you're asking, right? Discovery is trying to find a problem that they have that they want to solve. They're aware they have the problem. And Tyler alluded to this, right? Find a problem, find a problem they're aware is a problem, right? And not only that, they want to solve that problem, right? And then it's creating solutions around that. So the problem solving piece is you got to find a problem. You got to find something that's wrong. You got to find something that's broken. You've got to get agreement from them that it's wrong, that it's broken. And you want to also get agreement from them that they want to do something about it. They want to do something about it and they want to do something about it now. And so, again, that's why the power of discovery is so important. And again, it's not just about discovery questions, it is identifying a problem that your product, service, or solution can help them solve, or identifying a goal that they're trying to accomplish that your product, your service, your solution, and quite frankly, you going back to Tyler and charm and personality and how important you are to the sales process is. And so I think that that's a big part of it. Because at the end of the day, right? No business is going to invest or spend large sums of money on your product or service or solution if it is not helping them in some shape, fashion, or form fix something that is broken, that is having an impact on their business, or helping them accomplish a goal that the taking them from the current state to the desired state is going to produce a result that they're aspiring towards. And so again, looking for ways to be a problem solver, to be a solution creator, I think is a key core element of being successful and crushing that sales call. Right? Because
I
if at
think
the end of that call they don't feel like you've identified a problem, or and then not only that, help them to come up with methods of solving it, or a goal that you can help get them to, the odds of them doing business with you are they're pretty much slim to none. So
well,
Mhm.
and the only thing I ever add in the problem solving, because I think we talk about it from solution selling, this and that, and I don't want to. I'm not going to get in the weeds of the whole. I
yep,
do think, like, yeah, if you're in inbound, then everybody's coming to you that knows they have a problem. And I'm sorry, people that work in inbound lines, you're not as much in sales as you think you are. Little place in my heart for the people that are out there hunting, because they have to go find people, convince them they have a problem first
yeah,
before they solve it. So saying like, oh yeah, how can I help you? I get it. There's more to it than that, but not much more than that. So the part for me for problem solving is this: is it goes much beyond just the actual sales call. And what I notice is the top salespeople, they solve all sorts of problems. Meaning, to get a flat tire, they know how to go get it fixed. Their car breaks down, they know how to go get it fixed, right? They can't get a decision maker on the call. They know how to get that done, right? They don't. Their CRM doesn't do marketing cadences. They know how to use Excel or Word to actually do that without an expensive CRM platform. Like the the ability for salespeople, right? I don't have enough pipeline. They know how to solve that and go prospect more. So you really have two types of salespeople in my mind: problem solvers and non-problem solvers. That's the line in the sand for me.
Brutal.
Problem solvers, they go out and they can solve all sorts of problems, or within their own life, within people's lives around them, their own pipeline, the this and that. The non-problem solvers are constantly having to go to other people to ask them, how would you solve this? How do I do this? They act like YouTube and Google doesn't exist. They're the guys that turn around and they ask you a question. It's like, you really couldn't have just Googled that. You know what I mean? Like, so that is the line in the sand to me: problem solvers, and non-problem solvers. Non-problem solvers, they may stay in sales, but they're going to stay at a very low level because they're always going to be dependent on other people to bring them their food and cut it up for them and make sure that they chew it before they swallow it and all that kind of good stuff, right?
Mhm.
Your problem solvers, they find a way to always get it done.
dude, I
Yeah.
love what Tyler just said there. And you're right. It's like you can't just limit problem solving, or I like to call it cracking the code or code
Yeah.
cracking, to
Mhm.
just sales. You're right, the best salespeople, they're code crackers in and outside of work, like in
Yeah.
every area of their life. They're looking for the answer to the problem. They're looking for the solution. Phil, it looks like
you,
you've got
you all
something
have
to say.
we all have had that experience, right? Where the rep's like, hey, how'd that call go? Oh, the whatever Zoom, go to meeting, whatever they were using, it didn't load, so we moved it. What? Versus the salesperson that's like, oh yeah, sorry, I didn't record, it didn't work, so I just called them on the line, we talked about this, and they still
Yep.
they get it
They
done, and
find a way.
it's
Yeah.
They
weird. Yeah,
absolutely
Find a
find a way.
way.
yeah, yeah,
So that expression means a lot to me, by the way. Find a way. Those three words,
yeah.
like some people have built a career on those three words. But just in terms of the problem-solving piece, we've all worked with this guy named Steve, and he was obsessed with this expression, which is, "Don't sell me something, solve me something."
Yeah.
And that's always really, really resonated with me. Like, Are you just selling? Yeah. Like talk. Talking isn't selling kind of thing. But like, are you solving problems for them? So like, just take that into your next call. Like, um, particularly after your first call, you should have an idea about the problems that you do solve. And when you're going into that next touch point, that next call, whatever it might be, just, demo, closing call, whatever it might be, you should know that you should be talking about that problem that they have the whole time. You almost want to light the fire and pour gasoline on that fire and just be like, mates, I cannot believe you guys have been in business for XYZ and you guys have just had that fire burning the whole time. Like how has this impacted the business kind of thing? So like, you not only do you want to find out there's a problem and talk about that problem constantly, you almost want to find a way to twist the knife and make the fire burn so much harder and faster. So that's the first thing. The second thing for
Reminds me of my
is,
dad. You know what your problem is? No, but you're going to tell me. Yeah.
that's it. Your problem is you got too many problems.
Yeah.
So the other thing is, like, not every business is, willing to share the information, or they're not going to spoon feed you their problems. So like, you got to have a plan B. You got to be able to kind of say, okay, well, Mace isn't giving me a lot here, so how can I get something from him? So like, when you talk about problem solving, sometimes you have to know the right questions to ask to get the answers to that. So like, if I've asked him 4 or 5 questions and he's not giving me a lot, I might say something like, Mace, I work with a lot of companies like yours. Every business is different, so I don't want to overgeneralize. But what I will say is, when I speak to XYZ companies, they generally have XYZ problem. Is that something that's familiar to you, or is your business different? You're basically giving them an opt out to say, actually, no, I'm different, and here's why. Or they might even just say, you got me. Yeah, that's a problem for us as well. So sometimes it's just about what I call leading the jury. So like, you just got to point them in the right direction. Listen, that guy was in the right location at the time near the murder weapon. Like, sometimes you got to like point them in the right direction of where to be looking. Crazy analogy, apologies there, but so hopefully that makes sense. But
I thought it
sometimes,
landed. I thought it
No,
landed.
no,
Yeah.
it does. It reminds
Yeah.
me of something I say to reps all the time, right? Like, sometimes you have to give a little to get a little, right? And sometimes
Right.
that giving is, you kind of gotta lead them, to the answer, or to an answer, back from them. And so, it is a give and take, right? And
Yeah.
so, sometimes you
Well,
have to kind of feed them a little bit to get something back in exchange.
and I think sometimes salespeople don't appreciate the level of awareness and insight and just professionalism it takes to get there. Like, if I'm selling something, I really do. It can take me a good 6 months plus of like having good conversations with customers, doing the discoveries. Where I remember on one of my first kind of SaaS jobs, I was doing. My boss like, you gotta ask more questions. You gotta ask more questions. So I was like, well, like what? He's like, I don't care. Just ask questions. And he's like, there's no such thing as a dumb question. And then the next call, we're call listening, and I ask a question. He's like, okay, that's a dumb question. Don't ask that question, right? But one of the advice was it took me 6 months of just basically interviewing my prospects. Of like, how does that work in this space? What does this look like when you do that? What is that like? Like, and I really was using that to educate myself. My source of education in sales has always come from prospects, and then what I'm able to do then is 6 months later, right? I'm on the phone with you, Mace, and I was like, right. So, okay, you're doing that, right? Yep. Okay, and that's making this happen, right? And they're like, yeah, it is. Okay, and then how are you guys dealing with this part? And now all of a sudden, I understand the problems before they do. And Anthony, I apologize, sir, I always pronounced your name wrong. Anthony Iannarino, right? He says if you're expecting your customers to come to the calls knowing what their problem is, knowing what's keeping them up at night, you're really going to struggle in sales. And I'm paraphrasing, but too many salespeople say, right, Phil, what are your goals? What's keeping you up at night? Like, what are you trying to do in this area? What are you doing to solve for this? And they're like, what? No, like that doesn't work. You have to say, right. So you're doing this, right? Oh, I am. Yeah, yeah. And it's causing this? Yes, it is. And you're creating Phil's, I'm going to say your analogy again, Phil. You have to be pouring the gasoline, lighting the match, and then pouring gasoline back on it again. And that's a sales call. If you think you're the guy like, oh, there's a fire, let me sell you this fire extinguisher, you're missing the whole point of what sales is in the first place. It is you're the arsonist and the firefighter all at the same time.
Yeah.
I don't want to go into a rant, but I will just give me 60
but I'm going
seconds
to
on this. Give me 60 seconds on this. I
It's on the
think
clock.
technology is ruining the art of sales. Some people think that they have better technology or get better leads that makes them a better salesperson. It does not. It is solving problems and asking great questions, effective questions, and that's what makes a salesperson. You know, I don't care if you're using Salesforce, HubSpot, Marketo, all these amazing tools to warm up your leads and stuff like that. You still got to get on and ask the right question. I don't care if marketing gave you a 10 out of 10 lead. You know, they're not gonna sit there with their pen saying, I'm excited to sign. You still got to be a great salesperson. So, you know, I think some people are obsessed about sales enablement and getting better technology. Trust me, better technology does not make you a better salesperson. I was on the phone with a CEO the other day and he was asking me a question about a certain business. And I was like, well, if it was me, I'd probably just invest in my sales team more and training than, you know, buy an XYZ kind of tool. And he was like, yeah, Phil, we had this trainer. They're not very good kind of thing. And like, we just kind of had a really interesting conversation instead of like, it's not about buying technology to make your sales team better. It's actually about, you know, making them more effective with what they have. So yeah, a little rant for me. And like, you know, think about, it doesn't matter what technology you have or what you're selling. You've got to find those problems and you've got to solve them. That's the key thing as a salesperson that you want to crush. Can I identify pain?
Yeah.
Can I, you know, talk about it to the point where
accurately identify pain, not vaguely, accurately identify. I think that's a big thing people
miss. Think about your doctor. Just think about, you're a doctor, you're an expert, right? You walk in, you've got like your arm and you're holding it and they're like, you know, what's this, you know, what's wrong with your leg? It's like, no, like, you know, sometimes you got like, you know, like find that pain and, you know, like if I was the doctor in that scenario, I'd be like, punching the arm, like, you know, saying, oh God, it looks like it hurts, you know, like,
well, that's a whole different podcast of the guy that comes in. He's like, you know, you run a hat store and it's like, I want a New York Yankees hat. And there's one hanging right there. And they're like, yeah, let me show you around the store. Like, no, just selling that hat, move on with your life. Like, let's go. Right. Just for sake of time, I'm going to jump into this next one because it is mine as well, which kind of Go ahead, Phil. You're not gonna let me do it. Go ahead. I almost had it, Mace.
Sorry.
I almost did it, Mace.
There's been some amazing segues on this call, by the way. Everybody's kind of been out. Oh, which brings me to the next point. So sorry, I interrupt, Tyler. You go ahead.
No. Right. Is it this one? Because this one's easy, and I actually do think this plays in there. So the next one to me is I can't say it the way I always say it. So anybody that's actually been through coaching with me, they know what this one is. But it's have courage, right? Scared money don't make money, and I fundamentally believe in my heart of hearts that every salesperson will immediately improve their paychecks, their results, their ability to book appointments, their ability to close more deals, or whatever it is, right? When they stop being afraid. I think the biggest thing just in life in general, we'll get a little bit meta here for a second and we'll say, in life, people are more sabotaged by their insecurities, right? Like they're more governed. What is the old Aristotle? They're more governed by their vices than they are their virtues, right? So their insecurities are what govern them day to day. And I think for salespeople, they truly do struggle with, just make the call, right? Like I know it's scary, right? You do not need to do, and I'll make a lot of people, you don't need to prep a cold call. You don't need to prep. You certainly don't need to, make it super hyper specific when I'm emailing somebody. They're not going to read it, right? Pick up the phone, make the dial, have some conviction about your action, right? Somebody told you no 3 months ago. Oh, well, yeah, but they were mean and blah, blah, blah. Call them. Who cares? Like, get to the end of the sales process. Like, you have to trust yourself. You have to trust at the end of this process. Phil, have I shown you value? Yeah, I think you have. Great. I'm going to ask for your business now. And I'm not just going to say, definitely, people can sell me on the earlier stuff of permission based, but at the end, no. Like, do you think it makes sense for us to blah, blah, blah? Like, there are parts of the process where I agree with that. There absolutely are. But at the very end, I'm going to look the business owner, right? Like Mace, I would look you in the eyes and I would say, Mace, this is a good decision for your business. Do we have a deal? Let's give this shot, whatever it is, right? And you're going to say no. and I'm going to try to close you. Like, Mace, I respectfully think you're making the wrong choice here, and here's why. And that to me is what the courage is, right? So I say courage here because you're going to be afraid. You're going to be afraid that you're going to get hung up on. You're going to be afraid that you're going to miss target. You're going to be afraid, like, my God, I could share the stories of like missing car payments and juggling I shit you not, true story. I knew the bills where they could turn it off and ones they will give you 90 days before they repo or anything, right? And you juggle those and you just skip them around, right? I've been there, like, and you, but if you live in that fear, right, like that's fine, but it can't control you. You have to have
Right.
the courage to persist regardless. And I think that's where, one of the biggest advice I give to early salespeople is like, if you cannot control your fear of the phone, fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of missing target, missing quota, these stupid things that don't mean shit, right, in life, right? My fear has to do with my health and my happiness, and my family, and like those are my real fears, not whether or not somebody shows up to a meeting that we had booked in on Thursday afternoon, or if they say no. So the have courage part is a big deal to me, because if you let it ruin you, right, if it either it runs you or you run it. And so it's just a big one of mine. Yeah. Sorry,
But
Phil. I know you're trying to.
We're all guilty of being in our early 20s, and we're speaking to decision makers, owners who are probably a lot smarter than us, probably a lot wealthier, in a different phase of life and stuff like that. I was really intimidated.
Wealthier. I don't know about smarter. I don't know about smarter, but wealthier for sure.
For me, it was always smarter. But anyway, and I just, I always kind of, for lack of a better term, put them on a pedestal. And for the first couple of months, I struggled. And someone talked to me a lot about being equals and not being subordinates, and, like treating them like, being a doctor, being somewhat of an expert, in the room, so because we're not talking about their subject matter. If they're like a scientist of some sort or whatever, like, and you're not trying to be as smart as them on that topic. You're trying to be as smart as you can be on your topic and your product, and how it will solve their problems, like we just talked about. So just being an equals and not putting them up. But the other thing is just, you are not shopping with your wallet. One of the things I really struggled with was, I would be asking for these businesses in my late 20s, asking for $10,000-$20,000 for a business. And that was a lot of money to me at the time, life-changing money. And sometimes, but it's like peanuts to a business who has, $500,000 budget or $1 million budget. You're asking for like a drop in the ocean, but the way you're asking for it is almost turning the customer off. You're saying, listen, it's going to be $10,000. It's a big investment for your business, blah, blah, blah. Like, versus like, Tyler, this is just $10,000. Let's solve this problem. Like it's just the energy that you bring to this situation. So you're an equal, don't be afraid. You're an equal to these people, and do not shop with your wallet. You shop with their budget, and what you're asking for financially is so achievable based on that.
I love how they call it imposter syndrome or whatever. It's like, it's just insecurity. We all had it. Most of us still have it. Like, I hate that. I've got imposter syndrome. No, you got insecurities. We all do. Like, you don't have to have a fancy title to it or name. Like, nobody knows what the hell they're doing. Nobody. Nobody has a damn clue what they're doing. And I think,
is there a possibility that you have imposter syndrome for imposter syndrome?
All I'm saying is, nobody has it figured out. And to your point, Phil, is like, I think once you come to terms with that, once you realize like they don't have any more clue. Mace, I was thinking about it there. You started off in mortgage as well, right?
I did, yeah. I had a little stint right before the big crash.
You remember that, right? What was it like being, whatever it was, 20-year-old talking to somebody about their largest financial decision, look at their credit, you giving them financial advice when you probably couldn't have bought a Big Mac. That's how I was. I was like, if I pulled all my money, I can go get a Big Mac. But here's what you should do with yours.
100%. It's funny, as you were telling the story about courage, it reminded me, like, behind me, I guarantee you there are a handful of notebooks where I made a note to myself, like, because I didn't say something I should have said on a call, because I didn't have the courage to say it, right? Whether it was I didn't have the courage to ask an uncomfortable question that I know I should have, and at the end of that call, I wrote that in my notebook, that I should have said this, I should have asked that, right? I should have made this statement, I should have made this point, I should have, argued this, this objection this way, and I didn't because of a lack of courage. And I think there are layers to this topic of courage,
Yeah.
particularly in sales, right? Because there's there is courage to ask for the business. There's also courage to say, you know what, no, we can't do that, right? No,
No.
our product doesn't, as opposed to, you're right, overselling your product, service, or solution. It takes
Mm,
courage to say, you know what, that's not something that we can do. I think there's courage in, when they ask for a ridiculous discount. I think there's courage saying, no, I can't do that. However, here's what I can do. I think that takes courage as well too. And
yeah.
so again, there is layers to this curse, and it is a key core component to your success in sales. And the word that changed my whole mindset around courage was detachment.
Mm,
I
Yeah.
can clearly remember early in my sales career, once I realized that my attachment to the outcome was actually derailing a lot of my opportunities. And I got to a point where it's
Yeah.
like, I no longer care about the outcome of this. That doesn't mean I don't give a full effort. I don't follow my processes. What I mean is, I am not attached to whether or not you say yes or say no. And I may not communicate that verbally to them, but within my mind, once I got to a point where it's like, I don't care whether or not this person, decides to do business with us or not, or with me. And I think that does take courage, right?
does.
To do
Yeah.
that. And then also, I think, the other part of this whole courage conversation, I'll turn over to you guys, is along with that detachment was understanding that, you know, regardless of how big the organization was and how much money the organization generated annually, regardless of if I was meeting with the CEO or a VP or a director, that person or that group, they put their pants on same way I do, one leg at a time, right? And again, that took a lot of courage to get to the point where it's like, I had, even in my youth in sales, and even though I'm this, this inside sales rep, and they're this CEO, this VP, this director, whatever the case, with years of experience, once I got to that realization, the courage to go, listen, there's not much difference between us, right? If we really break it down, that was a game changer, as it relates to my sales success. So yeah,
I like
That's
that.
those are kind of
huge.
my thoughts on courage.
That's huge, Phil.
Right. So speaking of courage, I'm going to jump in on the courage. We got to just say I'm conscious of time. We got one more to get to. Phil, I believe this one's yours,
So,
though, right? Oh,
uh,
he goes. He
absolutely.
can't. We
No, no,
can't
no,
move on.
no. This is it. This is it. We want to talk about reading the situation. So
There we go.
just
So
let
I'm
that
reading the
last
situation, watching the clock, and I'm trying
reading the
to.
situation. So listen, this is a skill set that is definitely developed over time. In your first couple of months in sales, you're probably more focused on, if you're, talking too much, or if you've asked
Yeah.
the questions that you're supposed to ask and stuff like that. But what I mean is, like, in life, outside of calls, you read situations. You know who's attracted to you. You know who finds you interesting. You know who just who you connect with, really. So just, it's the exact same thing on a sales call. Like, read the situation. If someone's rushing you off the phone, read that situation. Mate,
Yeah.
sounds like you're really busy. Sounds like I caught you at a bad time.
Yep.
Can I catch you this afternoon or tomorrow morning? What works best for you? So, like, just sometimes read the situation. So if, I've just delivered the price to Tyler and I can see Tyler's nearly fallen off his chair, rather than be a weak salesperson, I'm going to pause and I'm going to read the situation. Tyler, seems like, you were a bit surprised by that. Walk me through, what that means to you, and give an opportunity to address that, situation. Or, sometimes it's just as simple as, just thinking the customer is not talking enough. It's like, okay, cool, Tyler, I've been talking a lot, so I wanted to show you as much as I can. But what are your thoughts so far? What questions do you have for me? So just read that situation. So it's a skill set. It's almost like you're 10 foot behind yourself and you're kind of watching yourself and
Yeah.
analyzing yourself, and it is a skill set you develop. But be aware of it, be cognizant of it, earlier on in your career, to think, okay, am I reading the situation correctly? Mace, it sounds like we really need to get Tyler involved for this in order for us to make a decision. And Mace is saying, well, I'll take it to Tyler. Like, Mace, do you mind if I ask, why wouldn't you want Tyler on a call? Because I'd imagine that he'd probably want to see this and ask, some questions. So read the situation. Why are they saying no? Also read the situation. What are they not saying? If you've reached out to someone 3 or 4 times and you're trying to book in a time with you, read the situation. It's not another email, saying, hey, does Tuesday work better? It's like, read the situation. They're ignoring you. Like, no response is a response in sales. Like, think about that. So it's very much an overgeneralization, maybe an oversimplification, but just read the situation. Do you get what I'm saying, Tyler?
When we put these up earlier, we were looking at it. I was looking at, so here was the way I took it, and I want you to kind of correct me a little bit, because I've always thought one of the most challenging things for a salesperson, what I think a lot of people truly underestimate in sales is that when I'm on a sales call, right, if I'm pitching you, Mace, like, I have to control my emotional state, like 100% in control of my emotional state. And that's hard enough for vast majority of people to control my emotions. That's tough enough. I also have to control your emotional state. I control that. I'm not like leaving it to chance, right? And then I have to I have to observe, would probably be the best word here. I have to observe your emotional state, and I have to continue to corral it and coax it and change it and point it. And I think a lot of salespeople, they believe that's all chance, right? Well, I'll show you what we have. I'll ask you some questions. We'll see if there's a fit here. No, I'm going to ask you 1 or 2 questions. I'll know whether or not there's a good fit here. And then effing game on. And then I have to. So when I heard, Phil, my question is this. This is where my question is that when I heard, or when I saw the read the situation, it's about perceiving the events that are happening in front of me. Like if I'm pitching Mace, and perceiving his emotional state, and then being able to, I'm gonna say, manipulate, influence, whatever word doesn't offend you, throw it in there, right? Like, and able to actually do that in a way that gets the results. Because in sales, that's what I'm after, right? One of my big things I ask people, like, in most situations, you tend to get your way. Sales interview. I love that question, by the way. Most situations, you tend to get your way. Every once in a while I hear the person like, yeah, sometimes, like, great, it's nice meeting you. But anyway, Phil, is that kind of how you mean it as well? Like,
yeah,
I know what you're saying
I mean,
before,
but it's the eye contact. Are they doing something different? Are they nodding? It's active listening. Read the situation.
Do you call them out? Do you guys call them out in that? And so I'm pitching somebody and they're eating a sandwich, or they all of a sudden go, they do one of these, like you're just talking about something, and then they do that.
Yeah. It's a real pet peeve.
Did you say something?
Yeah, particularly at the start of calls, people tend to wrap up something that they're doing. It's like, listen, Mace, I can hang on there for 2 minutes. I've got like 1 or 2 things I can do. Do you want me to let's just go on mute for 2 minutes, and then we'll meet back on when you're finished this little task that seems important and rude? I probably wouldn't say that, but you get the point. Yeah, I mean, you absolutely want to call people out, but here's the thing. We'll
talk about it. You're like, I'm having lunch right now. I hope you don't mind. No, but what are you having? Where do we order from? Oh, do you? We're going to talk about that.
yeah. But it's that equal business status. If they're doing something and you let them away with it, it's like, they're acting like you're not as important as they are. It's like, no, my time, is really.
But again, and that's where it's funny how all these work together now, because now, like, if you don't have the right charm, right? Like, you have to have courage to be bold and stand up for yourself, and like, not, put yourself below. But if you don't have charm, and if you haven't prepped and gotten that relationship beforehand, that you will just die. That call will be over like that. Yeah. But if you have the charm, you can get away with almost anything in terms of, the things you want to say. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, those are the 6 things. We talked about prepping for the person. We talked about, the next one was
be charming as hell. I got the charming.
Yeah.
I got you, Phil. We got the list here. Be charming as hell.
Discovery,
then we got discovery,
problem solving, courage, and then reading the situation. So real great content there.
Yeah, that's it. Mace, you want to take us away here?
All right. So, as the guy said, right, that wraps up another episode of the Students of Sales podcast. We're looking forward to seeing you guys again on the next episode. You guys will be able to find this episode and all of our episodes for that matter on all your streaming platforms for podcasts, YouTube, LinkedIn as well. Please leave your comments, leave your questions, subscribe. Also, rate and review. We'd love to hear your thoughts and your feedback on the content we're putting out. And until next time, we'll see you again soon.
Yeah. Thank
Thanks,
you,
guys.
everybody.
See ya.
See you
Bye.
guys.